I guess it always refers to that original idea of atomic habits, so to speak, starting small and you keep stacking it. You start small, you stack on top of it, and then there's like this snowball effect that by the time you realize it, that atomic thing that you started off with has now become really huge. And it's something that I suppose I would encourage many software engineers who are starting out to consider. Sometimes they think it's too difficult, but actually it's just starting small and then building on top of that.
Yeah,
That's the way forward.
yeah. That's why this section of making it obvious is like, so if you start big, then it's not really obvious, right? That's a lot of things that are uncertain, unknowns, and so on. That's why starting small and just it's easy to make it obvious to us.
So we have this existing habit, and then you put another habit. So and then as time goes by, you put another thing that you want to do, and then
So the idea is you stack habits and you make the previous habit the cue for the next habit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We should also consider our working devices. What I mean is our laptops. I think working on a Mac is far better than working on a Windows machine. So, do you agree with that?
I agree. I would say.
100%.
Yeah, I think the last time I used Windows was at least 15 years ago. So it's been a while. I do agree. Yeah, I mean a Unix-based system is just it's not comparable at all for development environments.
Hi, I'm Cara Ives Cadelinia, HR Director of Good Frontend UPC. We're here at Camp John Hay, Baguio City for a week of personal development. Together with the web developers, we feature our Good Frontend podcast. Inspired by James Clear's Atomic Habits, we'll dive into practical strategies for building effective habits, breaking bad ones, and transforming your life one tiny step at a time. Let's get started on this journey of growth and transformation.
Welcome back to the Good Front End Podcast. My name's Kane, and I'll be hosting our podcast series for this 6-episode series on atomic habits. With me is Jonathan, JP, and Francis from our GFED software engineering team. And today we will be discussing the first law in the Atomic Habits book, which is to make it obvious. It's chapters 4, 5, 6, and 7. And really the big idea is to, when you create a habit, you need to make the trigger of that behavior obvious. So you make the cue obvious. Just a quick summary. As part of this episode, we'll be covering cue awareness. How exactly do you make it obvious? Some tactics such as implementation intentions, habit stacking, and environment design. Let's jump straight to it. Maybe to start with, what's a cue?
Maybe I can start with that. So I can give an example of a queue. So for example, I use an application called Pomodoro app, or it's basically using the concept of Pomodoro, where you have 4 sessions of 25 minutes of work or focus work and 5 minutes of break, right? So you do that 4 times. And basically how I start my work is when I click the start button, I hear a click, right? And that basically cues me to focus in my current task. And after 25 minutes of time, the break timer will start. It rings a bell, and that's basically my cue for taking a break and getting out of that focus work, right? And that auditory, those sounds that it makes basically cues me to those two kind of flow, and it kind of helps, or actually does help me a lot. And yeah, I think that's one example that I can think of.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess that's the most common way people create cues. When you wake up in the morning, you set up an alarm.
Yeah.
It makes a sound.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's kind of similar
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't use Pomodoro myself. So but for you, you start. Is it 4 blocks that you do? 4 blocks of 25 minutes.
Yeah, actually I adjusted it, so I now kind of have 2 sessions of 50 minutes of work and then 10 minutes of break.
Ah,
I do
nice.
that twice.
So you do a cue to start work. You do 50 minutes of work, and then you get a notification to say
Yeah.
stop working, start resting.
Yeah.
You stop for 10 minutes, and then you get another ring
Yeah.
to start working again, and then you do 50 minutes and then 10 minutes.
exactly.
Oh, nice. Okay, wonderful. So the main point, I guess, in chapter 4 of the book is you need to make the trigger very obvious. In this case, it's an alarm. For starting new habits, James Clear talks about implementation intention to make it obvious, so to speak, making your cue obvious. I don't think I've ever heard the term implementation intention, in fairness, outside of Atomic Habits. So I think it might be helpful just to give an explanation of what it is. Does any of you guys still remember what implementation intention is?
Well, I guess from my understanding, implementation intention is basically having the not natural, but maybe the desire, or I guess intent to do the work. I guess I can give an example to make this clear. So in my case, unlike Francis, I don't use a Pomodoro. So what I do is I set up my environment in a work environment so that I put my peripherals in a specific position, so that I know, like, oh, if I see my desk, my setup like this, like, oh, it's time to work, it's time to do my task. And I think by just preparing my setup and just like having a flow, setting myself up for a flow, I think that's one way of having the intent, like, oh, it's time to work, it's time to get in the zone, I guess.
Yeah,
What
so
you
it's
say.
like you schedule it, like, right? So you have a specific place
Yeah,
and the time
yeah,
and
specific
the
time
intent of what you're going to do, right? Yeah.
So it's kind of like very deliberate. So after
Yeah.
setting up, then that cues you to
Yeah.
work.
It's like forcing yourself.
like I can even say that sometimes the environment, like, let's say if there's too much noise, usually I can't get in that flow. So whenever I sense that, oh, everything is more peaceful and it's like, like when you're in a library, like you go to a library because you want to study in silence. So I guess it's kind of the same for my case on my home setup. So yeah, like you have the intent to just be focused on what you're doing.
Yeah, no, sounds good. So basically, it's about being specific in terms of I'm going to do this at a certain time, at a certain location, and just working on it. Nice. I mean, the other one, I suppose, that James Clear was talking about, apart from implementation intention, when you're starting to build a new habit, is this concept called habit stacking. So, does someone want to expand on that? How would you describe habit stacking in your own words?
Yeah, I think you can. So habit stacking is when you have an existing habit that is, let's
Yeah.
assume it's a good habit, I guess, and then you have to stack a connected or related habit on that one.
Yeah.
So that if you saw that if you do that habit, the existing one, then you know that the cue is there. It's already there. Yeah. So I'm done with this, so I have to do this other one, the new habit. So I think that's the essence of that habit stacking technique. So we have this existing habit, and then you put another habit. So and then as time goes by, you put another thing that you want
Yeah.
to do, and then yeah.
So the idea is you stack habits and you make the previous habit the cue for the next habit.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sounds good. Just to, I guess, dig deeper on this idea of habit stacking, because I do like the idea of habit stacking. How would you propose for, let's say, a new software engineer, someone who is more junior? How would you use habit stacking to encourage them, let's say, to improve their code quality or maybe learn a new technology? How would you propose the use of habit stacking for that purpose?
Yeah, I think they can always start small first. So as a beginner, so for myself, I am a self-taught for development in web development. So I started on learning the foundation like CSS, HTML, and JavaScript, and from there, once since most of these technologies have documentation, you can go there and then check the examples there and then play around with it, and then from there you can you will be able to I guess fork or copy it on your local machine, and then start from there. Start from the one that's already existing. That because you don't have to stress yourself since it's still you're still new, and you don't have to pressure yourself by studying all of this stuff or new technologies that's being used in our industry, right? So you have to start working on your foundation first, and then from there build the other one. So for example, in our case, we have a React, right? But most of the article that we see when we say that how do you learn React, something like that, they say that you have to learn first the JavaScript and then move up to React there, something like that, right?
Yeah. So it's a process of mastery, I suppose. Yeah. You start by creating a habit of the foundations, and then building on top of that foundation. Once you make a habit out of those foundations, you build on top of it.
Yeah.
And then you build on top of that, and then whether that's a new framework or a new technology and so on.
I guess another example of that is, let's say I'm writing some code, and then afterwards I will try to review it. So that's kind of one of my habits, to review the code that I wrote, make sure that it's consistent with the layout or the style of code that is used throughout the code base. And then after that, I kind of stuck another habit on top of it, which is to journal what or reflect on basically what I've done and what the problems I've encountered and what I did to solve those problems.
It's a good thing you mentioned styling and the review, because I think this especially applies for front end, because I think most of us started development like just learning about code, but I think that as we go on with our projects, whether it's personal or for work, we usually tend to encounter problems that sometimes are outside the code base. For example, like designs, and then like criterias, and then usually for me personally, I find myself learning these design systems and other stuff that's there's not really any technical stuff of them at most. So yeah, I think it's more of like stacking in terms of learning. Like you're learning code, but at the same time you're learning things that are outside of the code. So yeah, I think that's one way of considering how habitual stacking works.
Yeah, so it's I mean, I guess it always refers to that original idea of atomic habits, so to speak, starting small and you keep stacking it. You start small, you stack on top of it, and then there's like this snowball effect that by the time you know, by the time you realize it, that atomic thing that you started off with has now become really huge. And it's something that I suppose I would encourage many software engineers who are starting out to consider. Sometimes they think it's too difficult, but actually it's just starting small and then building on top of that.
Yeah,
That's the way forward.
yeah. That's why this section of making it obvious is like, so if you start big, then it's not really obvious, right? It's that's a lot of things that are uncertain, unknowns, and so on. That's why starting small and just it's easy to make it obvious to us.
All right. So, in terms of cues and habit formation, chapter 6 of the book, I thought the title was quite attention grabbing. James Clear titled it, Motivation is Overrated. Environment often matters more. So, it's this idea that environment design is much more effective than motivation. Do you agree with that statement, or would you disagree with that statement?
I agree with that 100%. I think I relate to that a lot. So I like to set up my environments. I think I can even say that I romanticize my work environment at most. Like I like to make these, the stereotype, like when you're a programmer, you have like multiple screens and all that. So I think when you see something like that, let's say you went into an office, you see a desk, it has like 2 or 3 monitors, and then you have this very I guess cool peripherals like mechanical keyboard. I think mechanical keyboards are something that's very popular nowadays, whether you're playing games or not. I think for developers, they're quite a trend nowadays. So I think when you see those devices, like you just want to work, like you feel the intention to work.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a spoiler, right? So making your environment very pretty, I would say, is that it's just makes you feel good, then you just do better. And yeah, I also think that optimizing your environment definitely helps a lot. I myself optimize my environment, not only physically but also my own dev environment. In like I use some applications. I use a text editor that fits me, and so on. And those kind of environments, just physically or emotionally, psychologically, or whatever. Just making just making yourself feel good at what you have is very important.
So, what's your IDE of choice?
Oh, that's a good question. So I don't use VS Code actually. So I started with NeoVim. So it's a text editor. It's basically an enhanced version of Vi, an old text editor that contains plugins in order to achieve that IDE-like features of other like VS Code, so on. And also that kind of environments where I only use the terminal, right? So NeoVim is embedded in the terminal. I work just in the terminal, and that feels great, right? I don't need to change my kind of setup. I don't need to say change to another application to do something. Let's say when I try to, like for example, some people use Obsidian to take notes, but that's like another application to go to. But I only work in the terminal. I just use a text file type like Markdown and just edit that in the terminal itself. So I don't really need to switch to something else, and I just need to do it in one environment, and that just feels better to me.
How about you guys? Do you guys agree? NeoVim is the way to the future?
For me personally, no. I used NeoVim before. I mean, I use it from time to time, but I think the simpler setup just works for me. Like I just have my own, VS Code IDE and then just the built-in terminal from my laptop. I think I work much more effective. And I think because sometimes I use different IDEs for personal projects. I use sometimes the Visual Studio one, the one with the full-fledged IDE. There's another one called Z. I don't know if you heard of that. It's a new IDE for macOS only, I think, for now. And sometimes even Unity when I do my hobbies on game dev. But when I open VS Code and then just my stack terminal, then I just know like, oh, I have to focus on my current tasks or like my day to day. So yeah.
Yeah, personally, I do things very completely opposite to you. I like things separate. So yeah, I use VS Code normally only for coding. I don't use the terminal features. I use iTerm to, for that, and then I have to do things in tabs, virtual windows. Everything has to be completely separate from one another. And for the most part, if I'm just opening, let's say, a new code base or whatnot, I prefer to use Sublime because it's faster. But for my main project, I would use VS Code. How about yourself, Jonathan? How would you describe your digital environment workspace?
Yeah, so I think I've customized my setup in macOS as well. So I use this called Raycast app. So basically, some people call it Spotlight on steroids, I guess, because you can customize the each app for a key combination.
So Spotlight is the search functionality, is it?
Yeah, but
Is it the command space?
yep, that's
Okay,
the default, right? So what I did in my setup is to launch the Raycast app to Caps Lock space, since Caps Lock is easier for Pinky, right? Yeah. So I use it to launch some apps like browser, VS Code, and other work-related messaging apps, right? And yeah, so basically, I use single monitor, so that's why I decided to look for that kind of key bindings where you can easily navigate through all your apps on a single screen, right? Because some people may like it to like compartment their screen, right? Like for example, this is the half of the screen is the browser and the half of the screen is the editor, right? So I'm not that kind of guy. So yeah, so I use that Raycast and I feel comfortable on that one.
Actually, everyone has a lot of their own
Preferences.
environments, preferences, and so on. And basically, I also have a single monitor and use Spaces in Mac to just switch different places. Like my space one is for my my editor, the second space for my browser, third space Slack, and so on. And yeah, it's nice to see that everyone is like.
And I don't think I think no one has mentioned this before, but I think we should also consider our working devices. What I mean is our laptops. I think working on a Mac is far better than working on a Windows machine. So, do you agree with that?
I agree, obviously.
100%.
Yeah, I think the last time I used Windows was at least 15 years ago. So it's been a while. I do agree. Yeah, I mean a Unix based system is it's not comparable at all for development environments. So here's one question for you, and perhaps we will end with this question. If you were to advise your younger self when you were starting out, what environment design advice do you think you would give to your younger self? That could be a digital environment or physical environment. What would be your environment design to your younger self so that you can be more productive and that you can create good habits?
A lot of things actually. As long as I have cash, that is. I'll buy 3 monitors. But no, I personally think that my current environment is my kind of end
And
kind of end game
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I would say that sticking as for my younger self, just sticking to what you can work with at that time, what you can just try, what you can just use, whatever is in your own disposal, just use it, right? Because at the end of the day, all you want to do is just to do things. And that's all.
Yeah. I think I agree with what you just said. I did mention a while ago that I like to romanticize my setup, but I guess my advice to my younger self is use what works for you and don't be. I guess romanticizing it has a limit. So in my case, like I thought that I need 3 monitors to be a developer or like multiple screens to be a developer, but you don't really need that. Sometimes you just need your laptop like on your lap. It doesn't even need to be on a desk. As long as it works for you and the environment is like helps or like gives you this zone feeling, that's heavily focused on it. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think you can also plan your. For me, I think it would be helpful to plan your learnings. Like you can have a roadmap or yeah. Actually, I think it's good to have a mentor, since an experienced developer can help you guide when, like for example, he can guide you on what you have to learn. For example, you're a absolute beginner, like you don't know anything on any programming languages, right? And then he or she can give you a template, I guess, that you can follow, and then follow that. And since your mentor has the experience and you don't have one, so you can stick to that roadmap first, and then explore, I guess.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So, I personally join communities, tech communities, and just feel myself in that kind of space of just helping other people. Just having a community helps a lot. Just having a community helps a lot, right? And yeah, I agree with everyone, and I think what works, right? I mean, Adrian from previous series just has a simple setup, but he's the best out there.
Well, the funny part on your responses, we started off with motivation is overrated, environment often matters more. Now we ended up with with people telling me that environment doesn't matter. Just work with what you have, and then just just have people around you who can teach you and mentor you.
Well, for a absolute beginner, you don't have money, right? So
Yeah,
you don't have
yeah.
anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think that's the difference between trying to understand something in theory and in practice when you have experience.
Yeah.
Because in theory, certain kids would be advantaged because they would be in the best environments. Let's say they are in the best schools, they have the
Yeah.
best equipment, they have like all the rooms that they have, but not everybody starts like that, so you just have to work with what you have, you focus with what you can do at the time, you surround yourself with a community of people
Yeah.
that can help you out, and then over time you then build an environment that works for you, right?
Yeah,
So-
actually, yes.
Okay, no, that's wonderful. We don't have to agree with everything that's in the book, but experience always trumps theory. So thank you so much. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you, JP, and thank you, Francis.